the Masons who died in the battle, and talk a little bit about what that means to us. My name is Tony Kimball. I'm a past master of Alamo Masonic Lodge number 44. Our lodge was founded here at the Alamo almost 174 years ago. We held our first meetings right there in the Long Barrack, and it's commemorated by 2 plaques on the wall. I encourage you to take a look when we're done. Now we meet in the Scottish Rite building, which is just 2 blocks down the road. It's a beautiful building that's almost 100 years old itself, and it houses many Masonic organizations, several local lodges, as well as the Scottish Rite. And today we had guests here from the Shrine. You'll notice they have the fancy red hats, and they love to talk, so ask them questions, learn about the organization. It's a Masonic organization just like ours, as is the Scottish Rite. We have representatives here from those organizations, so please ask questions. We're not afraid to tell you all about Masonry. One thing Masonry does is, before any great and laudable undertaking, we like to bless the occasion, and so at this time I would like to invite District Deputy Grand Master of Masonic District number 64B, Right Worshipful Corey Harris, to please bless this occasion.
Thank you very much. Brothers, ladies, and guests, if you would please join me in offering reverence on the Most High. Supreme Grand Master, all-knowing architect of all things, we humbly come before you as servants. We come before you today and ask that you ascend from the celestial position and join us and preside over our proceedings this morning. We ask that you bless this occasion, that you allow the lessons and the messages that we hear and receive to be marked upon our hearts and our minds as we remember, memorialize, and commemorate the bodies that were left on this ground and the souls that were returned to you. We ask that you bless all those who attend and all those who will attend this beautiful monument, as it is a monument to the fervency and zeal of the Texan. All this we ask in your most supreme and our magnificent name. Amen.
Please be seated. Thank you very much, Right Worshipful Harris. That was wonderful. As you might suspect, the Alamo has a very strong tie to Freemasonry in the state of Texas. It's a very long history that is just ripe with stories and insightful things that most people don't even know about. And so here to help us understand more about that deep connection, I want to introduce the Grand Orator of the Grand Lodge of Texas, Right Worshipful Rit Moore.
Thank you, Tony. Being a fifth-generation Texan, it is a surreal moment to be allowed to speak in honor of the Battle of the Alamo. That heroic battle that is continually echoing through time, inspiring generation after generation. As all Texans, I grew up with the mythos that is the Alamo. Rarely was there a time as a kid spent out in the woods shooting BB guns with my brother and cousins that inevitably one of us would make mention of how they were as good a shot as Davy Crockett, or how Jim Bowie would love our survival knives with the built-in compasses and waterproof matches. The actions of those men who fought at the Alamo was an inspirational atomic bomb that not only inspired the community of people and land we call Texas, but it gives generation after generation inspiration and a sense of duty to make Texas the greatest place to be. While reinforcements may have been in short supply at the Battle of the Alamo, there is no doubt that there was an abundance of bravery and the independent spirit that would become the Texas spirit embodied in those men who fought to defend the Alamo. These characteristics are what transformed the Alamo into something bigger and are the rocket boosters that propel the legend of the Alamo through time. As a Mason, I am very familiar with symbolism and the power a symbol holds over any amount of words. When I'm explaining to a new candidate joining our fraternity the nature of symbolism, I often refer to a silhouette picture of the Alamo and ask them if it makes them feel anything. The answer is almost always yes, which shows the power behind symbolism, especially the symbol of the Alamo. You don't even need to say the word Alamo, just the sight of the building conjures emotions that are extremely potent. which is rare for any symbol. The real testament of a symbol is time. Time has a way of wearing down symbols and storing them in the attic of history. But the story of the Alamo has been whispered upon the hearts and minds of Texans for the last 185 years with no sign of slowing down. Let me read you a few examples of what today's youth told me when I asked them, out of the blue and with no coaching, what they thought of when they thought of the Alamo. A 14-year-old said it was a symbol of courage, freedom for the people, independence. A 16-year-old thinks about Davy Crockett and the men who lost their lives. A 17-year-old said, remember the Alamo. A 10-year-old said, independence, remember the Alamo and Sam Houston. A 16-year-old said, war, courage, and sacrifice. Another 16-year-old said, Texas independence. A 6-year-old, yes, I said a 6-year-old, he said Davy Crockett with a big old grin. His family sent his answer to me in video format, and his dad asked him, said, are you a Texan? And he said emphatically, yes, followed by born in Fort Worth, Texas. You gotta love it when a 6-year-old is proud of his heritage. Some of those answers are also a great summation of the Texas spirit, but they all show how the legend of the Alamo is alive and strong with even the youngest generation. I know hearing words like that from our youth about the Alamo conjure emotions in us as adults. It certainly did me. I'm sure it brought up a few different emotions, but I'm willing to bet one of those emotions was hope. See, the truly powerful symbols can unite generations and give us one of the key ingredients to a happier life, and that is hope. Symbols can be so strong they can unite a people and even build a country around them. The enormity of that power can be taken for granted by generations removed, but the Alamo's memory is so compelling, it still prompts one to contemplate the immense effect that moment in time had in store for future generations. History seems to look kindly on the virtues that have been honed to go way beyond the normal practice, whether it be wisdom, strength, intelligence, or any of the others, but few seem to have the inspirational power and durability bravery does. Can you imagine leaning up against that stone wall of the Alamo, hearing the rumble of thousands of men of Santa Anna's army approaching? You decide you need to see it for your own eyes just to make sure some random cattle stampede or the light's not happening in the distance. You pop your head over the wall and the cold wind from the northern blows down your neck as the shiver runs up your spine at the sight of certain death. You see what seems to run the full horizons of well-trained and equipped men that are coming for your life, confirming what you hoped was untrue, that Santa Anna was there with a large army and he was early. As you pop back down and catch your breath, you pray for those reinforcements or any help, but deep down you know that you're in this with the few men at the Alamo, and with William Travis at the helm, you are all but certain it will be victory or death. It seems the anticipation would have made the air thicker and harder to breathe. Days of cannon fire and trading musket fire were sure to keep the mind running wild on what was to come. Then waking to the eerie bugle call, El de Gallo, after almost 2 weeks of grim anticipation, surely signified to the men that the eventual battle was finally at hand. We know when the battle started, those men were cocked and ready. They fought valiantly indeed, and I can only imagine the focus it took to hold their ground as long as they did. After fighting off the second onslaught of Santa Anna's vast army, the men of the Alamo had to have a moment where they thought, we just might pull this off, only to look over to the last few cannonballs and reach into their cartridge box to fill the few rounds of ammo they had left. The heightened emotions those men felt in their last few hours on this mortal earth still seem to linger on the hallowed grounds of the Alamo. When you walk the Alamo, it's hard not to feel their bravery and desperation. One thing that I like to believe, and always will, is that they knew what they were doing was much bigger than themselves. As chilling as the certain possibility of death is, I think those men knew that turning from a moment like the Alamo was a much darker prospect than death. Those men let fear go and invited the Grim Reaper in for breakfast so they would have a friend for dinner. I thank God they mustered the courage to welcome the grim tyrant death and sacrifice themselves at the altar of freedom. That type of valor and bravery are what can change a structure like the Alamo into a seemingly immortal symbol for generation after generation to draw on for hope. Thank you.
Thank you, Right Worshipful Britt. That was one of the finest orations I've heard here at the Alamo, and I've heard several. I want to thank everybody for being here today. Obviously, with COVID, we're a little bit fewer in number. We have a little bit of an abbreviated ceremony, but still it's important because this is an annual trip that every Freemason in Texas should make, to stand on this hallowed ground where all the heroes that we know by name were Masons. There's no other feeling. So I hope you guys will go back and tell everybody we're going to be back here the same time next year, and we'll be back in full force. Our fraternity teaches us that there's an immortal part within each one of us, a soul that will live on after we're gone. And when you think of the valor of these men that Britt just spoke about, it really makes us look deep inside ourselves to find that courage to be better, to be stronger, to represent this great state that they left for us. But that immortal part that was within them, that is within us, it will never die. And that's why we're here this year and every year. And that's why we laid this wreath at the Alamo, to remind us of their bravery and their sacrifice. So at this time, Right Worshipful Moore, if you would help me in laying this wreath.
Do you want to come? Yeah.